to The Last Cast, HBO's unofficial The Last of Us recap podcast. This show, hosted each week by me, Jack, and Andrew,
Hello there.
we'll take a deeper look into the mega TV series event, The Last of Us. We'll break down, assess, compare, contrast, and have a bit of fun as we go. So grab yourself a cup of Joel's favorite blend, and let's get on with it.
Just a bit of fun. Not too much fun.
Not too much fun.
Just a bit.
We
we dialed in the scientific correct amount of fun.
Yes.
Right?
We can't go overboard. I think we go overboard a little bit on Wayfaring, and that's fine. But on this show, reel it in a little bit.
Oh, okay. We can't have any fun. I figured it out.
What'd you figure out?
I want to let you know.
Okay, you're gonna let me know.
Last week, I misspoke. I don't know if anybody cared to correct me on this, but I wanted to correct myself. Okay?
Yeah.
I said Romeo and Juliet, and you rightly pointed out that was not an apt metaphor.
Yes.
But I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Thelma and Louise.
That's just another Romeo and Juliet, because they were being pursued by the police, who would have caught them and thrown them in jail and separated them.
Yeah.
So they took that. They literally had one way to go.
But they did it together.
Oh my God! I still don't think that's. They
looked in each other's eyes.
I still don't think that's it.
Bonnie and Clyde.
No, again, pursued by the police and gunned down.
Okay,
and they were criminals.
Police,
so
the police in this world would be the infected or potentially raiders. You know what I'm saying? They carved out their own little niche of happiness.
Nothing in controllable circumstances was coming for Bill and Frank. It was old age, and
Clarence,
they were like
in Alabama.
I don't know that one. Is that just a made up one, or is that
no? It's from True Romance. Clarence in Alabama. All right.
Well,
fine.
I can't.
Clarence in Alabama might be the most correct one, because Clarence saves Alabama from a bad situation. They fall in love. They get married. Then they go on the lam. Not pursued by the police, though. Just pursued by bad people. So it's different.
But Bill and Frank were not being pursued by any one thing or group of people.
Yeah,
if you
I'm just
say
saying.
Disease and old age, I will reach to this computer
Aren't
and smack
we
you.
all being pursued by disease and old age in a way, you know?
No, we're willingly and willfully marching towards that.
I'm running from that. I
You
don't know
cannot.
about you. I'm 75 years old, okay?
I was waiting for someone to comment about that. Nobody did.
I'm going to keep bringing it up every episode now, so don't worry about it. I'll
great.
I'll comment on it. Don't worry. Okay.
Well,
I'll work on it. How about that? Listeners, if you have a metaphor for Bill and Frank, of a couple in popular culture, let me know. Also, let me know if I'm off base with any of the ones I said. I feel like Clarence and Alabama are the closest now. But I really like the idea of Thelma and Louise. Mainly for the ending. But maybe not everything up to that point. I'll work on it.
They went on a spree together.
Yeah.
They slept around and then they were robbed. That's not Frank.
Bill and Frank went on a spree together. They had strawberries. They restored a boutique. It's just they're just focused. They just put their energies into different buckets. That's all.
I disagree.
Okay.
I mean, yes, but they weren't pursued. They lived a happy life together, and then they made the conscious choice to say, I'm happy. I've had enough. I don't want to do this without you.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's what, we said we're going to keep this episode short. So.
And you did this.
I just wanted to banter for what? What are we talking about here? 5 minutes tops.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That gives us 1 hour and 55 minutes or less.
Okay.
To cover this episode, which was a shorter episode.
It was the shortest episode thus far.
Okay.
But on the same vein of corrections, I was corrected over on Twitter. I called the video game that Ellie talked about in the Last of Us Part 1, the video game. I called it angel knives. And a couple people were like, Jack, it's called The Turning, not
Unbelievable.
Angel Knives. Angel Knives is the character. And I, of course, know that
classic mistake.
Things happen sometimes. We are not going to be right and correct 101,000,000% of the time.
I mean,
but I'm going to try. I do try, and that's the important part. So everyone knew what I was talking about. I stand corrected. It is The Turning. That is the video game that they that is mentioned in Left Behind, the DLC, as well as The Last of Us Part 1.
Okay. So, all right. You got to,
yes.
Make sure, I know you will, but you got to be on that.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, Joel, I forgot to talk about this too. Joel wore Frank's shirt, the green plaid shirt at the end of the episode. And for some reason, we just didn't touch on that. I really liked it. It's this continuation of, lives that have come and gone, but in small ways, they persist and exist. And I really do like that. And Joel in the video game, you start playing him as a character wearing a green plaid shirt. So that was also kind of a link to the video game.
Sure. They put their uniforms on in this episode.
They did. And Ellie, because we talked about Ellie in her palm tree shirt, but we didn't talk about Joel in his plaid. It was weird. But a little TV ass shit in that Frank was wearing that shirt and it was crisp and new 16 years earlier, and Joel's wearing it and it's still crisp and new. And I'm like, really?
Look, Frank takes care of his shit. I don't know.
Frank
seemed like...
Yes. But 16 years, I don't have any piece of clothing in this world where we don't have to wear the same thing over and over again without washing for a while, presumably, in their situation on the road. And things don't last. I know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Again, it's all right. But that was a quick little thing I wanted to talk about. And here's something that some people might not like, but as a female leading this podcast and Wayfair and Strangers, I just have to speak my mind real quick.
Speak your truth.
Yes, I really am enjoying the official Last of Us podcast, but it is just Boys Club Central. Are there no women that they could invite on that show? It is just Troy, Neil, and Craig every fucking episode. And I'm like, was there any single woman who sat down in the writer's room, or a producer, or a costume designer, or a writer, or somebody that can just have a perspective that is not the Three Amigos, essentially? That's all.
Three Amigos, great film.
That's all.
Maybe not the best setup for a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I don't know what the production budget and obviously it's clearly HBO sanctioned, so the resources are there. It's just how much did they want to dedicate to it? How quickly did it need to be turned around? There's a number of things. I don't know.
I get it.
Scheduling 3 adults to do anything is like an impossible task.
And especially people in not, I want to say positions of power, but very well sought after in their respective fields. So I'm sure I understand the logistics behind why maybe some women just didn't want to be a part of it, didn't have time, blah, blah, blah. But it's just that, like, and today actually, there's an account called Good Pods, and they basically did the statistic that out of all the podcasts in the world, only 27% of them are done, either created, hosted, produced, marketed, etc., by women. And so from our Last of Us account, I was like, hi, I'm Jack. Like, I do that, and it's definitely a point of pride. And, so when I listened to the official Last of Us podcast, I'm like, man, I would love to hear what Anna Torv had to say about this, or Bella Ramsey, or Merle Dandridge, just anybody. That's
Maybe
all.
you will. Maybe you will at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they probably reserve that for those like after show recap things. You know what I'm
saying?
Yeah,
but those are like 30 seconds long.
I know. Nothing. I get it. Hey, look, I get it. If you want, again, I've told you about it. It's just maybe not your cup of tea, despite you loving the show. But the teams behind both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul have had what they've called the Insider Podcast. So starting on season 2, I believe, of Breaking Bad, the whole creative team involved, not the whole, let me be very clear. A large portion of the creative team involved behind those shows gets together, sits down, talks about it. So you're talking about the editor, the director, the creator. So it's always Peter Gould, Vince Gilligan, the showrunner, the writer, you know, so you would have people like Michelle McLaren, who is like a very highly sought after director. Yeah. On the episode, talking about the episode she directed and stuff. So I get what you're saying. It is great to get that insight. That's all. So I don't want to, you know, I'm not trying to diminish the official podcast. I'm not trying to be like, you know, I'm just, you know, we're 4 episodes in and it's just yeah. So that's all. And I was talking about it to a couple of my close friends and I'm like, it would be nice for a little variety. Variety is the spice of life, Andrew. Okay. That's all. So, I agree. Yeah. You'll get no argument here. So as always, no spoilers for this show, for the actual Last of Us HBO show. We have a game spoilery section at the end of these episodes, but we will never talk about events that we think will happen based on the knowledge we have of the games in future episodes of the HBO show, if that made any sense at all. So you are safe with us here. Yeah. Our drop schedule. We do not use our knowledge of the game. We do not lord that over you. Like a snarky book reader might. Yes. For Game of Thrones. Got it. We're not snarky book readers. But our drop schedule. So we are just going to stick with a Wednesday drop schedule. So, you know, we need Monday basically to write everything out, get everything in line, Tuesdays to record, edit, Wednesdays to drop. So that's how these things are going to go for the next 6 weeks. We're already, well, this is episode 4. So going forward, Wednesdays is when you can expect us. Also, we've been tossing around the idea of starting up a Patreon with basically one tier for like $5 a month, where you would get a shout out from me and Andrew, as well as access to our Discord and ad-free shows, because that is something that will be coming to these episodes. We have ads at the end of our shows right now, but we have to start putting either pre or mid rolls in there because our listenership, Andrew, went up 300% in 30 days. So score. That is, I'm doing a fist pump right now. Yeah, it's incredible. And you know, podcasts are very time consuming. And I hate to be that person. Time is money. So if we're working on this, we're not working on the things that, you know, our work that brings in income. So yeah. And if any of you, you know, just want to toss a coin to your witchers, you can do that right now over on Coffee, which is ko-fi.com/TLOU podcast. And that's for Wayfair and it, you know, also for the last cast. But again, no obligation. Okay. Yeah. And we'll talk about all of our contact information and such at the end of this episode. And Andrew, you're going to take the first 2 parts. So I'm going to tell you guys about the episode summary before Andrew tells you about his summary. So HBO tells us, after abandoning their truck in Kansas City, Joel and Ellie attempt to escape without drawing the attention of a vindictive rebel leader. Vindictive rebel leader? Yeah, I know. How dare you talk about Melanie that way? Anyway. She's an angel. She's a nice lady. Leave it alone. All right. You ready to? So that's, you know, HBO. They really just give just like, who knows what would happen in this episode based on that. I know, and I'm going to tell you. So here it is. It's my episode 4 recap. Here we go. Our episode opens with Ellie auditioning for Robert De Niro's role in Taxi Driver. Pew-pewing with her gun in the mirror, posing, the whole 9 yards. She exits what we learn is another gas station And in their timeline, we learn a full tank of gas barely gets you anywhere these days. Gas breaks down at the molecular level. That's actual real science. So, we used to be able to go hundreds of miles. Now you can go, I don't know, 10 or 20. I don't know. I have no idea. To pass the time, Ellie tells a few incredible jokes from a nifty joke book. Joel cracks a smile in spite of himself at a few. A needle drop montage of Hank Williams alone and forsaken takes us through middle America, collapsed bridges, Arby's for the second episode in a row, and an abandoned amusement park. We pull off the road for rest and Chef Boyardee, but we can't start a fire, as always, because people are a real threat. We also learn a little bit more about Tommy, Joel, and the people they ran with, and get glimpses of the things they may have done. In Kansas City, we hit a roadblock, literally, and double back for a shortcut rather than go the long way around. We see the QZ seemingly cracked open, with Fedra soldiers nowhere to be found. Our heroes then fall into a trap, a firefight ensues, and they emerge victorious, but emotionally a little worse for the wear. Their foes all killed, with their bodies being discovered by backup. Kathleen appears, the leader of a group of rebels, maybe insurgents if you're nasty. She's looking for someone named Henry and knows a doctor she has in her captivity. She's looking for someone named Henry and knows a doctor she has in her captivity might know his whereabouts. He overestimates his value to her, and shortly after finding out her men are dead, she kills the doctor. Joel and Ellie lie low, make their way to higher ground to scope out an escape route. They rest, but not for long. Ellie wakes Joel, only to realize two people got the drop on them.
I feel like you did a lot of detail up front and then just kind of like sped through the back half of that.
I put a little bit more detail up at the front because we may be able to, those are things we may gloss over. Whereas I know we're going to go deep on some of the later stuff. So I was like, where are we going to talk the most? Let me spare detail where I know we're going to be talking.
I got that.
Kathleen. I didn't even mention a certain character we meet who's got the most luscious beard in history.
Jeffrey! All right, we'll get there. But yes, if you could take the first two sections, please, Mr. Andrew.
Yeah, I could do that. Oh my God, here we go. Roll credits. No cold open for the second time. And if you're the kind of person like we are to just look at the episode length going in, you'll also be like, what the hell? We're getting chipped. 50, what is it? 45 minutes? It was
like 45 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, this is a shorter episode considering we've gotten some long ones. It works well though, given where we left off with Joel and Ellie in episode 3. We just kind of want to get right into the action. So, and we're heading out onto the open road. So we start at the gas station, like I had mentioned. Ellie is staring into her reflection in a mirror. It's very dirty. It's awful. It hasn't been. I don't know when the last person came in to do their checks and cleanings. It's terrible.
I put more emphasis on the fact that her face is completely blank versus the dirty mirror, but that's just me.
Hey, look, we all take different details from our scenes. You know what I'm saying? She pews the pistol she took from Bill and Frank's. I was hoping that we would not see this gun again for a little bit. Turns out, nope.
We were wrong.
The little bit, maybe. I was just completely wrong about that one. Unloading the pistol, she clears the chamber. She studies a live round. She knows her way around the gun, right? This is not someone, she also has great form. Her index finger is not on the trigger when she's doing the fake shooting. It's great. Then she practices again. She squints back and forth between her left and right eye, trying to find what works best. It's very cute. If you have ever held a gun or, for the first time, you might make the mistake of, if you're holding it in your right hand, you use your left eye and you're like, what the hell is this? It's great. It's great. She pauses and squeezes the trigger. There's a small kind of smirk on her face. Clearly she likes to have the gun. We don't, we don't know if she has what her experience with guns in the past has been, but she likes to have this thing and knows her way around it. She smells the gun as well. She gives it a little sniff. which I'm sure smells fine. Maybe like some oil. Places it down, reloads it, back in the pack it goes. Outside the gas station now, we see basically everything you would expect to see here. Broken down cars, glass everywhere, that sort of thing. Ellie walks to Joel, who is crouched beside a car, siphoning gas. We learn through Ellie's questions that every hour they have, we learn that basically every hour they have to get more gas because it breaks down over time. Like I said, molecularly, it falls apart, petroleum. Gas is water, essentially, which fans of Mad Max Fury Road would really, really enjoy that. Joel makes a comment about how they could drive 10 to 12 hours on one tank in the past. Probably not in Tommy's pickup, but that's neither here nor there. No. Ellie asks where they went, and Joel responds, pretty much nowhere, which also kind of describes where they are in this episode. Pretty much nowhere, for a lot of it at least. We learn kind of. Joel gives us a little bit of a physics lesson on how siphoning works. Joel tells Ellie not to wander after she calls him out on this, and in doing so, pun book appears. No pun intended. Volume 2, TOO, by Will Livingston. Emphasis on Volume 2, of course. This is a very Joel and Ellie moment, and they both lean very hard into their characters. It's really, really, really funny to watch. Joel pretends to hate it. Ellie doubles down. You love to see it. And then after Ellie threatens the return of Will Livingston, Joel and Ellie hit the road. And here we go.
Yes, but first, so this episode, right from the get-go, kind of sets the tone. Like a 14-year-old kid is holding a gun, a loaded gun, and pointing it at herself in a mirror. And this really just continues to build on what we've been talking about on the past 3 episodes, in that, in my not so humble opinion, they're really leaning into Ellie's darker attributes while still lending that lighter side to her overall to kind of smooth it out, I think, with the audiences, both game and show audiences. So that blank stare followed by the squint, squint, squint shows this duality that we're learning excuse me, and have been talking about for, this is our 4th week now already covering the show, which is just wild. I don't necessarily know how I feel about this yet as a diehard gamer fan. I know the way I know Ellie and the way that I love that character, this is a different delivery. I don't dislike it. I'm not entirely used to it yet, but I do think that it will all inevitably serve a greater purpose, for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, this is very reminiscent of Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. His character Travis Bickle, very charismatic kind of guy, but also unhinged, right? And you go back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing with Ellie here as well. So,
oh my God, is that me?
Are you asking if you're Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver?
Yeah, and Ellie. I feel like I'm unhinged but charismatic. Now I'm questioning everything. Continue.
We've seen it before also with like, the modern equivalent of that exact take on Taxi Driver was in Todd Phillips' Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. So that, it's not I don't even know if Taxi Driver was the first to do this sort of thing. The character looking in the mirror, pointing a gun. It's playful, but dangerous. It walks a very thin line. Sure. And her being a young teen makes it both more playful and more dangerous, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So that's kind of where I am with that. I like that we are establishing a dark and a light. It's in keeping with the theme of what I believe this first season will be, with the Fireflies and their motto and all that stuff. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. When Ellie smells the gun, so we all know that scent memory is the most powerful of all of our senses.
Yeah.
And the first time I watched it, I had that oh, that's interesting. But then the second time I watched it, it felt like Ellie smelling the pistol will be something that the show revisits in the future, whether it's through a flashback or some event yet to be. Or again, if it's a flashback, maybe she smelled the gun oil, or like, when was the gun recently fired? It was years ago, presumably by Frank. Did he even fire it that night? I can't even remember. But whatever that, like, scent is just an evocative sense. So something drew her to that, and there was a reason for it. So maybe it reminded her of something that's already happened, her first kill, because clearly she's done that before. Well, we don't know. But I think that that will be something that is revisited in the future of this show.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but the sense memory. But of course, that makes total sense. Yeah, I will not even hypothesize on it. I would just love to be potentially delighted.
Yeah.
Or just, well, delighted. It's probably not the right word for someone smelling a gun, but just told a really nice backstory. Put it that way.
Darkly enchanted. There you go. And last thought before we move on, the pun book. So, oh gosh, Ellie and her puns. So there's more significance. We'll talk about this in just a little bit more detail in the spoilery section of the game, but just know, people who have not played the games, that this was a flawless incorporation of an element that is very beloved in the video games, and they pulled it off perfectly, and I loved every single one. And when Ellie leaned in on the algebra joke, I was like dying inside. I'm like, the character is just shining so brightly through her. All right, now it is my turn. So we are now driving, and Ellie, from the back seat, learns that a really big ass truck with a plow would clear roads of civilian vehicles for tanks to pass through, back when there were, of course, more people and more problems. And Ellie wants to see a tank. That is something that she is curious about. And Joel says tanks, choppers, all that stuff, they will inevitably see it as they progress through this journey across the country to Wyoming. And shortly after this, Ellie finds cassette tape in the truck, and it is none other than Hank Williams's Alone and Forsaken, which almost was the name of this podcast, just FYI. But as Ellie spots something else in the rear of the truck, so Joel puts the music on, he enjoys it. We're going to talk about that shortly. But after that, Ellie spots something else a little curious in the truck, and as this happens, so Joel is enjoying the music, and there's this wash of fondness over his face, and he kind of even like sways his head a little bit. And even though it was a song before his time, of course he knew it. We all know this song, and I mean, it's a great ass song. Hank Williams. I think it came out in 1954, was the year, which was the year my parents were born.
It's a funny thing about this song, just a little bit of trivia, because I was reading about it.
Sure.
He never actually recorded a proper version of this song. It came out 2 years after he died. The version that we heard was actually just like just a version he sang on a radio show.
Holy shit.
It's like the one kind of like definitive version of this song that exists is that one. So pretty cool.
That's sad.
Yeah, I mean, Hank Williams has had quite a career. So it's not like it's not like my one great song came out after I was dead, you know, it's certainly, I believe, I'm not an aficionado, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's probably his saddest song.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, go look at the lyrics, but beyond that, so this whole moment and Ellie finding this curious item begins one of the best exchanges between Joel and Ellie in the entirety of their story.
Yeah.
Which includes an X-rated male magazine once owned by none other than Bill.
Bill, you dirty dog.
You dirty dog, you, Bill. But this moment is almost identical to the car scene in game 1, like pretty much word for word. Yeah. And it's this hilariously awkward exchange, and Ellie taunts Joel by flipping through the pages, folding them out, and commenting on male genitalia, and it is just full stop legendary Ellie behavior.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to say.
That's right.
it's funny because of she just has his number already. You know what I'm saying? She has his number, she's exploiting it and getting the most fun out of this whole exchange. And people, if you have not played the games, I urge you to just YouTube Joel and Ellie car magazine scene, or however you want to phrase it, because it is enchanting and hilarious, and you'll love it. And you'll love them more because of it. So, yeah. But afterwards, she ceremoniously tosses the magazine out of the window to a bye-bye, dude. And I know I did more of Ashley's than Bella's there, but that's okay. And the drive continues on. And Hank's song is playing here, and we pass bison, and they are all roaming free, sort of, even though they're still kind of behind a rusted fence that lines the road. And Joel is driving in the lanes, which is a beautiful show of how the force of habit is so hard to break. Yeah. Even when there's literally no one on the road. And we pass a theme park, and just a little plug for Wayfaring Strangers. So Andrew and I talked about, it was quite a few months ago now, 4 or 5 at this point, maybe more, I can't remember, but we talked about the idea of Joel and Ellie passing through on foot. In our show, it was on foot, not with a truck, but passing through a theme park on their journey to Wyoming. And we had quite a bit to say about that. So if anyone's interested, just check the link, and I will have that show for you guys to just go directly to. But it's just, it was one of those moments again, like the tampons from episode 3, where I like looked at Andrew and I was like, oh, a fucking theme park, you know?
We talked about that. Talked about that every episode. We're like, wait, are they listening to us?
Yeah.
Are they listening to us? You know, one of those. You know, Craig seems cool. You know,
Craig's, yeah, I agree. Oh my God. And yes, again, the lyrics to Alone and Forsaken are just absolutely a perfect fit for this world. And Joel and Ellie's characters, both individually and now as they come together on this journey. But the overgrowth of the world that we are being shown is absolutely stunning. And we see a bridge. Andrew, would you like to just talk about other commentary that we talked about on Wayfaring about bridges?
Don't go across bridges. Don't go across bridges in this world. So one, they're either going to be highly patrolled. It's a 100% a trap. But also, do you know how much maintenance has to go into a bridge? 20 years? You're telling me you're going to cross a bridge after Absolutely 20 not. Years of disrepair? Get out of my face. Yeah. Listen to this and more great insights on Wayfaring Strangers.
Yeah. And then we see another Arby's sign. So is Arby's a sponsor of The Last of Us on HBO? Maybe.
I hope so. I'm going to Arby's tonight.
But they pass a field of broken down tanks, armored trucks, and various military vehicles, all abandoned and all useless now. And Ellie stares again with that blank expression on her face as they drive alongside it all. She does not point out the tanks, even though she seemed very eager to see one. So that's interesting. It's a sobering sight, if anything. And the lyrics versus the cut of the show was absolutely seamless here. So as Hank sings, I wonder what she's thinking of, forsaken, forgotten, without any love, the camera stays on Ellie's face. And it was I was like, damn, that's good. Like, that's good.
Generally,
yeah,
I hate this.
But
I mean, you know, props here, of course, right? But generally, when it's so on the nose, I'm like, stop. Generally that happens though with a show that doesn't trust its audience enough to make those connections. Here they have established a lot, and they put a lot on us to observe and be cognizant of. So that's why I didn't mind it here. But normally, you know, when they're playing like a break, you know, someone just has a breakup and they're playing I have no current references. They're playing Dido or something like that. I'm like, please stop this. Please stop this immediately.
We know we're sad.
Yeah. But I know how I'm supposed to feel right now.
And for our third commentary, bringing Wayfaring Strangers / Wayfaring West into this. And again, that's our show where we are going to visit all the locations in the games. We've only done one thus far. It wasn't a location in the game, but we also hypothesize other places they might have visited.
Sure.
Again, please listen to Wayfaring West if you're interested. But or Wayfaring Strangers. episode 1 of Wayfaring West. But there's a partially collapsed train bridge in the distance, and Andrew and I had a discussion where Andrew was gung-ho about holing up on a train car on a bridge isolated. And in my defense, seeing what happened, that's exactly why I said wouldn't do that. Because
I wouldn't be on a whole ass train. Just one car. Just the dining car or a sleeper car.
It's an impossible amount of weight, Andrew, sustained on an unmaintained bridge for 20 years. That shit would collapse exactly like it did in the show.
I would make sure that the car is over one of the trusses. You know what I'm saying? One of the load-bearing trusses.
An architectural engineer. I am not. But still.
I'm just saying. That's what I would do. I'm still in. Not all of the train fell off that bridge. Some of it was safe.
Yeah, the engine is the part that collapsed.
Yes, that's where I live then.
Oh my gosh. But Joel looks back and forth at Ellie before deciding to call it a day for driving. And he pulls the blue and white truck off into a field towards a thick forest and drives onwards towards a place for them to rest for the night. And they unpack just enough to eat and settle in and make camp. And he cooks their meal, which turns out to be 20-year-old Chef Boyardee raviolis that Ellie absolutely destroys.
Done.
And yeah, same. And Ellie asks about the timeline here. You know, how long is this going to be? You know, what's the plan? Blah, blah, blah. And basically Joel says we're going to sleep in the woods tonight and then drive all night and all day, or all day and all night tomorrow to reach Wyoming in about a day or so. Mm-hmm. And Ellie asks about starting a fire, but Joel begins to give what turns out to be a pretty stern lesson in why that wouldn't be a good idea. And it's not to avoid infected because they're in too remote of a location to draw them out, but rather people. So Ellie asks if people would quote unquote rob us, but Joel says pretty much everything we need to know with, they'll have way more in mind than just that, meaning they're not just going to rob us. And we get what he's saying, and it doesn't bear repeating. But it's evening now, and they roll out their sleeping bags, and Ellie, of course, must have Frank's because it smells good.
Yes.
And I just, again, the details, like we're just carrying from one episode to the next. It's wonderful. And Ellie, so Joel arms himself with a rifle and lays it beside him. Ellie arms herself with her joke book and turns the lantern off, but then clicks on her flashlight to read a little bit of the book. And eventually she turns it off, rolls towards Joel and whispers for him, but of course he ignores it at first. And she has a very serious question for him. Why did the Scarecrow get an award? And Joel, who rolls over and just kind of stares for a moment, simply just delivers it perfectly because he was outstanding in his field.
Correct.
And I love this exchange. She calls him a dick because he got it right. But the man knew the pun perfectly, and the delight that this brings Ellie was absolutely perfect. And then, much to my delight, we get a shot of the sky above them and the stars just shining brightly. And I think that that's just a very quintessential shot when anyone is on TV or a movie camping. Like, you have to show us that.
Right.
You have to show us.
Look even if we've seen it 1,000 times. If there was no pollution or light.
Gorgeous.
You know?
Just gorgeous.
Just the whole galaxy.
Yeah. Everything above us. And Ellie asks about whether or not people will find them. Basically, no one knows we're here, right? She's a little uneasy for a second, and Joel reassures her, but it's not entirely the truth that what he's saying, it's only for her sake. And he looks around the wide open forest for a moment there, and then to his rifle, and we know that this man will not rest, and of course he does not. So as Ellie sleeps, he stands guard, presumably awake all night, safeguarding their truck, their gear, but most of all, Ellie. But before we get to morning.
Yes.
So a big ass truck with a plow sounds familiar to something that we've seen in a couple trailers and we will see later on in this episode. So again, they do a lot of payoffs and immediate payoffs at that. And I appreciate that. So I just wanted to, it bared repeating, I guess, unlike other things in the show.
Of course.
The awkward magazine interaction for Joel was priceless. Again, I'll add more at the end of this, but I'm very happy that they included this in the show. I feel like there would have been a mini uproar if they skipped over this.
Maybe even a kerfuffle. Who knows?
A full-on kerfuffle.
Yeah. The great kerfuffle of 2023.
It's so early in 2023. Let's not kerfuffle that bad.
It was, hey,
Yeah.
It's Notable.
Yeah. Another must that had to be included was Hank Williams' song, as we've been talking about. So it was a song in The Last of Us Part 1 when they were in the car. It was also in the initial full trailer for the show that we are now talking about. And to have it come here felt a little bit like a full circle moment. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me ask you, just really quick,
Sure.
following up on this. Do you believe them both to be alone and forsaken?
So this is an interesting question. In the game, I lean more towards Joel owning that title more than Ellie.
Yeah.
Even though Ellie has experienced loss and heartbreak and has grown up way too fast. But I feel in the show it's a lot more balanced. So I'll say yeah.
You think they both are?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Do you?
I mean, they have each other despite it all. Right?
Yeah, not fully yet. I mean, he literally goes on to call her cargo in a couple seconds. So
sure,
that's
but what is what is the opposite of alone if not having another person, you know?
Yeah, but you can be with people, like you can physically be present with people and still feel completely alone.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're there yet.
Yeah, but this episode feels like a turning point for sure.
For
Maybe this song at the beginning of this episode, but this song I don't think applies to the end of this episode, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, we will get
just
there.
She's wearing him down, but in the good way. Like the joke book is like smoothing the rough edges over time. It's like, you know, whatever your analogy is, a waterfall on the rocks.
For sure.
You know, whatever that is. But yeah. That was just interesting. I was like, I was really thinking about that based on the lyrics specifically that you said. I was like, I'm gonna look these up. And as I was learning more about the song, I was like, does this apply to these two? And I mean, yeah, I could be. It's a strong opinion, loosely held. Like if someone gave me a good argument, like, no, they're not. And here's why. Blah blah blah. I'd be like, oh, that sounds good. Okay.
Strong opinion, strongly held, almost all the time. So
that's that's the T-Lou podcast guarantee.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good question. I would say for the most part, yes, it's still applicable at this point. I think it starts to become less applicable towards the end of the show.
If we were just framing it the exact way that you had just moments ago, game people versus show characters, whatever.
Yeah.
It feels to me to be far more apt description for the game. And the show not so much. Like the alone and forsaken, I feel like applied directly to them in the game, and here it kind of felt more about like a world vibe, like alone and forsaken, like look, there's nothing, right? Forever, like the road they're driving on, you're like, it's nothing at all. So that's kind of how I was feeling about that one. But yeah.
No, and I think that's the beauty of storytelling, and how where we're coming from, we just perceive things differently. And that's the beautiful part of it. So yeah, good pull. But getting to see, and speaking of the world, getting to see the world in a larger scope here was great. It removes this imminent danger of the infected while giving viewers a moment to breathe, while reminding us that the grand scheme has suffered and failed over the last 20 years. So it's like we're looking at it and we're seeing all this growth and emptiness, and it's a weird dichotomy, I think, because we have these two people with their own histories coming together on this one mission for a purpose that, do they both fully believe in it at this point? Maybe. I feel like there's a little bit of an autopilot thing happening at the moment versus any kind of mission-driven, heart-driven thing. But having that in the car and then looking at the world all around with these really wide sweeping shots was a really good way to balance things. And it's Like, for me, I'm a person that can really get stuck in my head and obsess and obsess and obsess about the most minute thing. But really, sometimes I just gotta fucking go outside and touch grass and calm down. Like, I know, like, I just, like, dude broed myself, and that's fine, but, you know, we all could.
Are you high right now? No.
No, but yeah.
I guess this is the perfect time to mention this, worth noting. No infected in this episode. None.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
well,
we've gone like, no. I'm saying I feel like we also went like 90% of the last episode with no infected either. There was
just that one guy.
Yeah, in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that we have seen that they are dangerous. We have seen what they are capable of doing, that they should be avoided, that they are a force that exists in the world that needs to be recognized.
Sure.
But they are not a constant threat. Like, if you're smart in this world, you may never, I shouldn't be so absolutist about it, but yeah, you have a very low chance of encountering them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I like that. A lot of people are, Mike, if you're listening, Mike has referred to this, your brother-in-law,
our brother-in-law,
our brother-in-law, my bestie, Mike, has referred to this as like a sophisticated Walking Dead. And this episode in particular felt the most Walking Dead. And I mean that as a compliment. Like, when The Walking Dead was like at its like prime, firing on all cylinders, like peak stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that you would go long periods of the Walking Dead show where there were no zombies either. It's just like, this is just human drama that we're experiencing right now. And it's cool. Yeah. It would get old if we were like every single episode we're like,
for sure,
we gotta kill this goddamn thing. Same with zombies, like, oh my god, another horde of zombies. Shit.
And that's the same rule applied to video games. If you're doing the same fucking thing over and over again, if you're constantly pursued, constantly hounded, that's not a fun experience for a gamer. You need that break.
Yeah. I of course. Mm-hmm. And the game does that really well. Many horror games, or whatever you would categorize The Last of Us as, understand that pacing, that interactive, that narrative pacing that needs to be in place as well. So just saying, it's just worth noting that, no infected. This part of it is a truly just human story where we see that who we really need to look out for. This particular episode. Yeah,
for sure. And again, on that same vein, I think this is a really perfect segue, but people are being talked about as the great big bad quite a lot in this episode, and even, a little bit in previous episodes. So we know, like Chekhov's gun with Frank's desk gun, this is all leading somewhere.
I was wrong.
And the show is really good at balancing so many different things and being so wonderfully consistent. But one thing I do see is the almost immediate payoff of certain things. And while that's really good, I do hope that some things are kind of stretched out over time. Like, when we were talking about the gun that Ellie swiped from the desk drawer, you and I were just like, oh, this is going to come back in like the most badass way in like 5 episodes from now or something. Right. And it was literally in like the first scene.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because they're like, oh yeah, in like 5 episodes. It's like, oh, you mean the finale of this season?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I have to recalibrate my barometer, or whatever you want to call it, for like how we are going to truncate parts of the game that take hours to play.
Sure.
That can be accomplished in the show in a matter of minutes. Mm-hmm. And so grabbing a gun and stashing it might work really nice for like a movie or certain television shows, but this has already established itself to be not like those.
No.
In all ways positive. So, yeah.
Yeah. And a quick little comment. We say this or have been saying this with Wayfaring Strangers, but Joel, your care is showing. Yeah. And it's much more impactful on Wayfaring Strangers because Joel is a lot more subdued and quiet.
Aloof
in the game than he is in the show. But it is also beginning to show here in this show already on episode 4. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Hey, guess what happens the next morning? They wake up. And it's my favorite way to wake up, to a percolator. Coffee brewing. You know what I'm saying?
It's time for the percolator.
Joel is being loud and Ellie like squints awake, like, oh God, and waking up outside to just the sun everywhere already. You know, it's like, oh, my eyes. Coffee brewing, obviously. She is not a fan of my favorite brown bean juice. What did she call it? Burnt shit? Is that what she calls it?
I think burnt dog shit.
Yeah, something. It was really, really funny. And Joel just kind of goes, "You don't like coffee?" So, cut to a shot of him like literally drinking out of like a pristine thermos. Right? It was awesome. Mm-hmm. Truck starts, and we're back on the road. So in the cab, we have more conversation about coffee and QZs and Joel not giving a flying fuck about Ellie's opinion, as he just kind of has his moment, his morning moment, as I like to call it. So Ellie is the guy in the chair for this part. She's using the map. She's kind of the navigator, the co-pilot.
Yep.
Right? She's figuring out where we're going to go on our journey, 76 West to 70 West. Both roads, you know, we are familiar with. The 76 cuts right through our state, like right through.
Yep. And it's that fucking road.
Yeah. Well, it's oftentimes a pain in the ass, and sometimes it's beautiful. We find out that Tommy is in Cody, Wyoming. So Ellie has that map there as well. So if Tommy is there or in another settlement, Joel's like, I'll find him. I think he says, I'm persistent, or the way he describes, you know, it's pretty good. Ellie inquires about Joel's brother. We find out some more details that we kind of already knew, but we get it reiterated for Ellie's sake. Younger, long story about why they're separated. Ellie has a great comeback to that. It's like, is it longer than 25 hours? So plenty of time. We learn that Tommy is a joiner, as Joel describes him. He dreamt of being a hero. So he joined the army after high school. He was in Desert Storm, which was just a small detail we pointed out in episode 1, which was great just to have that come back. The army did not work out for him. It wasn't what he had anticipated. We're not really sure. We'll probably get maybe some details about that. They joined a crew that moved to Boston, and that is where they met Tess. The crew worked for a while, I believe is what he says. What they did, it worked. Until Tommy meets Marlene, and then he joins the Fireflies. So he kind of moves from an army to a militia almost, right? Joel himself said he didn't find value in kind of this like pipe dream of wanting to save the world. So they just did not have common ground there.
No.
So Tommy is on his own after quitting the Fireflies. So we find out that he goes and does that, but then he quits that too. And now Joel needs to go get him. Ellie asks about hope and why bother if there is none of it. And Joel says that you keep going for family. And that's about it. And we get the line that we had in the trailer, which I thought was pretty powerful. Ellie isn't family. She's cargo. But Ellie also represents a promise that Joel made to Tess. And so that is the family in this case. Tess is the family, not Ellie. He's doing it for Tess. Yeah. So she doesn't react to this beyond asking about Tommy again and what they do if they can't find him. Again, Joel reiterates his persistence, basically lets Ellie know, like, hey, why don't you just take a nap, kid? We got a long drive, right?
Yeah.
She's not tired. She says, I'm not even tired. And then the next scene, cut to her conked out. That went almost shot for shot like the game. It was really, really nice.
Yeah.
So they do a nice thing where we linger on Ellie asleep, her mouth is agape and all this stuff like that. And then they come up to a busier section of the road. So then there's like abandoned cars all funneled, and like there's an overpass, and then a truck has like jackknifed, and all these cars piled up, right? Mm-hmm. Joel grabs his rifle, tells Ellie to stay in the truck. Skeletons are left behind. There's devastation everywhere on this side of the road. Okay.
Yeah.
Joel bends down to look kind of like between these cars and the semi truck. And on the other side, the road is completely clear. Right. Yeah. So we already get a sense like, oh boy.
It's a trap.
Right. And I think Joel probably knows that too. He's like, this is not his first rodeo.
Yeah.
He makes a plan to go around the tunnel, and then get back on the road. So instead of going hours out of the way, this will just be a couple minutes. He was like, we'll just take an exit back there and do this thing. So they're driving through the city, right? They can't find the highway. Ellie and Joel are kind of stressing out now. He's like yelling at her about the map. She's like, this is my first time reading the map, whatever. There's a theater where Underworld and Matchstick Men were the last movies to play there. Both good movies. I'm going to be honest with you.
Underworld, stop.
No, you wrote in the notes, ugh, Underworld. No, I say ugh, Underworld. Yes.
No, absolutely not.
There's a wooden pallet resting against a tree. If you know, you know. Let me just say that. They wouldn't just put a wooden pallet here. If you know, you know.
Yep.
There are piles of burned corpses, all seemingly non-infected, right? That's worth noting. In an alley, we're getting bad feels. We're seeing this city, right? We're seeing Kansas City shot from a bunch of different angles and none of it good.
Yeah.
They are lost.
Yeah.
Ellie spots the QZ entrance, tells Joel to stop. Fedra is not there. The gate is open, right? Mm-hmm. We know that gate, at least in the Boston side, it opened, it closed. It was a fortress, right? Yeah. Next is a man who appears to be hurt and asking for help. Joel puts on his seatbelt, tells Ellie to do the same. She can do this herself now, which is nice. It is an ambush. Shots are fired. The truck goes over spike strips. We crash into a laundromat. No one is hurt, but they're still being shot at. They're still being pursued. They get out the passenger side. Right. Joel reaches in the back seat, grabs his rifle. There's a hole in the wall of the laundromat. He asks Ellie if she could squeeze through. She can. So he says, go there when I say, and stay put till I say. It's like, they will not shoot you. I don't think he says I promise, but he's like, they will not shoot you. Right. Mm-hmm. Stay down, stay low, stay quiet. That's what we're talking about here. She keeps her eyes laser focused on him. He fires off a few rounds. He yells, go, right? He's, kind of a crack shot himself. She makes it through the hole. Joel begins to take out the baddies. He gets one, right? It's like a great shot from long distance, right?
Yeah. Goes
to the back of the store. After he's just kind of like, he got the two that were outside. He's going to the back of the store. One busts open the back door with a shotgun, right? It's crazy. Joel was messing around with his rifle. It was all jammed up, but he gets a good uppercut. He knocks the shotgun, the shotgun blasts up at the ceiling, and a struggle ensues. Joel is losing this struggle. Ellie peeps through to see. It's not going well. She grabs her switchblade, but then she remembers she has a gun. Never bring a switchblade to a gunfight.
Yeah.
She sneaks through the hole, slowly walks up behind the guy who is like choking Joel, with the kind of a rifle or a shotgun, right? Joel's hacking. It's clear that he's not going. He needs help, and so Ellie shoots him right in the back. Okay, the guy begins begging for his life. As he did not see this coming. he doesn't know what to do. It's a very affecting scene because it's like he knows he is beaten. He seemed to just be fighting for, we don't know what, but like he makes a reference to his mom, and you know, he can't move his legs. It's sad. It is really, really sad. Ellie isn't reacting too much here, and she doesn't seem to respond when Joel finally does get up, gets a breath, and grabs her pistol. Brian throws a good knife, right? He's like, here. He's like bartering now. He's like bartering for his own life. He's like, take this knife. This is a good knife, right? He's like handing this to Joel. Joel tells Ellie to get back behind the wall. She turns and hustles away. Joel makes sure she's out of sight. Brian's still panicking on the floor. The camera's holding on Ellie, but we're hearing only what is happening in that other room. We know what's coming here. Once out of Joel's view, Ellie cries. There are little short bursts of, sharp breaths. We hear Joel stab the man and then ask Ellie to clear the debris, blocking the door in the building she's in, like adjacent wall type situation. Yeah. Once Joel gets in, checks in on Ellie, sees if she's okay, grabs her pack, says they have food, and she's like just trying to keep it together, keep it cool. She's like, I have food. We're good. I got your flashlight. She's just trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
From here, they're headed up to the roof to hopefully spot a clear route out of this town. Joel tells Ellie to stay close as they navigate inside and outside of the building. They crouch behind a car. Trucks pass by, loud voices. It's like, shit's going down. We got bodies. We got bodies, right? Yeah. If you played the game, you've heard that line, right? Joel and Ellie leapfrog across an alley, sneak into another building, right? So, but let's take a pause here.
Yeah. You did it. I think that's the longest section in the notes, actually.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna jump ahead, or no, let's be linear, because that's how my brain works.
Let's be studious.
So Ellie hating coffee is classic game Ellie, and Joel loving coffee is classic game Joel. There are lots of game identifiers brought into this particular episode, and I found it pretty curious that they deviated so much in certain, in episodes 1 to 3 in a lot of different areas. But this one, where Joel and Ellie have this time to the most time that they've had together, they kept a lot of the quote unquote canon material. So that was pretty interesting. And I think, I don't want to call it, I don't think it was fan service. I don't think everything was done for the game fans. I think it was because a lot of what they pulled from the game still works very well in context of where they're at in the show.
Yes. I think it's probably when you have a long stretch of time where you just have these two people and no one else. So it's like, who are our characters? Our characters are Joel, Ellie, and the world, right? There's no better time to sprinkle in character details than in the interactions between the two of them during these parts, because it could feel ham-fisted if it happens in a moment of like tension or something, but like relatively low danger here up until this point that we just like up until Kansas City, relatively low danger, no other characters around. They're getting to know each other a little bit. So I'm a sucker for that. Again, I make reference to the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. Like, when they have things, I'm like, I remember that. One of those things. So this worked great. It might even be something that is, we know that we went a different way with Bill and Frank, but guess what, guys? We played the games. We know, like one of those types of things. Like, don't worry. We're not going to change everything. And I am of the mind of like, hey, I change it all. Not all. I mean, not all of it, but like, some people we're going to meet soon. This seems great so far.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I'll say. I think this is the perfect opportunity. I can't think of another time where we might get to learn about how much Joel loves coffee. Unless they like come across like a closed down Starbucks or something like that. Or maybe they go into like an abandoned Arby's based on how often it's come up in the show so far.
Yeah, I got that. No, that's good. And the joke book had its prime time, and I have no doubt that it'll continue from now on. But and so continuing from there, learning more about Tommy in general, and then Joel's persistence to protect and take care of his brother despite their disagreements is a testament to Joel Miller beneath all of the outward kind of curmudgeon attitude, which again it's a lot heavier in the games than it is on the show. So he's more gruff and quiet and less curmudgeonly and miserable, I think. And I love curmudgeonly miserable Joel more than anything, but
sure.
I liked learning about Tommy, and like you said, that link to Desert Storm was perfectly placed, and little things. It's like we don't need hours of exposition or, our hands being held. Like just drop a comment and move on, or drop a scene and onward. And they're doing that really well.
This is that trusting us to understand, to pick up on the details, right?
For sure.
We're going to leave these details that might pay off in big or small ways later.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Tommy being a sniper.
Again, that was a really nice one, and that's really more of a callback than anything. Like, it seemed pretty clear to us that, like, oh yeah, he was in Desert Storm. You don't just put a Desert Storm bumper sticker on your car if you weren't. I mean, that seems a little unhinged if you were to. I don't know. I don't know. But Joel loving coffee, like, I don't know. That seems like that's a small thing, but like, hey, could be just like hold up a cup later on, or whatever. Sure. Cheers. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Ellie being a curious kid, though she might seek answers that could affect her in one way or the other, she doesn't shy away from the questions. And I really admire that about her character. I always have. But I think it's more emphasized in the show. So she knew opening that line of dialogue with Joel in the car, if you have no hope, what's the point of this? Yeah. And Joel, well, you go on for family, but I'm not family. Know your cargo. She knew what she was walking herself into. And again, I think that's kind of that like darkness to her character where it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways, because that's all she's known her whole life. Is just people leaving her, people letting her down, people making her feel insignificant or less than for one way or in one way or the other. And I think it's a combination of like this weird dark curiosity, but a knee-jerk, almost like a knee-jerk unintentional thing that just happens because that's how she's lived her life and survived.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Okay.
That's I reserve. I think that might be I feel like that could be like a challenge is the wrong word to use for that. But like almost like a proving, like you don't view me in the same regard that you viewed Tess, right?
Yeah.
I can prove that I'm worthwhile. I'd be interested to see where they go. They keep bringing up this line of questioning, like where does Ellie wanting to know where she stands with Joel. And I think it is a proving for her.
Okay.
Like, I'm capable, I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm like worth having around, that kind of a thing. So I got your back, more, that kind of thing. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think it will continue to build, if not escalate, as the episodes progress, for sure. This is some TV ass shit on full display, and it irks the fuck out of me. But Joel leaving his backpack behind in the truck instead of just grabbing the fucking thing before going to the door and Ellie letting him inside is so weird to me.
What if he got shot? You know, who knows?
There was no one there.
Maybe back up. I don't know.
There was no one there. And if that urgency had been present, why would he stop to make sure she was okay before proceeding slowly out of the building? You can't explain that away. It's TV-ass shit, and it's supposed to come back in one way or the other in the future. Who knows how that will play out? But like, to not grab a single thing out of that truck, including his backpack, I was like, really? I can't handle that shit in TV shows or movies, Andy, when it's like somebody comes home from work and they just walk in their house and don't shut the door or don't lock the door or don't roll their car windows up or don't lock their car. I'm like, are you fucking kidding?
Some people don't do any of those things.
Well, they're going to get murdered. That's how that goes. That's such dumbass shit.
I feel like the pack will come back. I
feel like the pack is going to get picked up and there's some sort of identifying characters or something in there, and that will be an element for Kathleen to whatever. I'm sure it will come into play in one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it didn't have to be done that way. That's all.
Agree that it felt like an oversight.
Yeah.
But I reserve my full judgment until I see how it plays out.
Okay. So. Fair enough. Last comment before moving on. Ellie shooting the hunter Ellie shooting the hunter to protect Joel and having little to no reaction until she's away from Joel is another sign to how she's absorbing so much from him already, but has also experienced quite a bit on her own apart from him and before him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Craig at the end of the show, because again, I don't listen to the official podcast until after we record our show because I just don't want it to muddy my opinions. Or alter my opinions, rather. Muddy is a weird word to use for that. But Craig, in the little, post-show chat that they do on HBO, he talked about Ellie basically mirroring Joel in a sense, almost becoming him already. And I don't like that at all. I don't agree with that, because when you are talking about the whole journey of The Last of Us, if you're having her adopt all of these characteristics this early in the show, it makes me nervous for what's to come.
We
can't really talk about it.
No. We can only talk. I mean, we could talk about in regards to what Craig said on the thing, and then just compared to what we actually saw in this episode. I think that she just wants to present what she wants to present herself as is someone who, in Joel's eyes, is strong and capable, and she's
like him.
Correct. So it's not we've seen her be emotionally intelligent, right? So when she's in the last episode, when she's reading the note and it gets to the point about like, use this stuff to protect Tess, like use my arsenal to protect Tess, and she stops reading, right? She knows like, oh shit, like he's not going to want to hear this. And he grabs the note and goes outside. She's not dumb. She knows in that moment that he doesn't want her to see her. He doesn't want her to see him in a moment of like sadness, right? And that is an exact mirroring of what we see in this episode. Like she goes over and she has a quick cry and she's like, no, you can't let him see you like this. Like, so in that regard, there is something there that she like maybe grabbed from him, but personality wise, that's not her. I don't think. Right? Okay. She just wants to reflect.
She's mimicking a lot.
Yeah. She wants to reflect strength back, I think is what it is. And to her, she's just saying like, oh, this guy, Mr. Tough Guy over here doesn't want to cry or talk about tough stuff. So, okay, I won't either for now. But that doesn't mean that she's not thinking it or feeling it. Clearly, clearly Joel was very sad about Tess, just like she is very sad about this thing that just happened to her. So this is all just posturing at this point. And again, yeah, I don't know. I think it's not long for this world. Like, these two characters, they care about each other already. Because if she didn't care, then she would just be crying, right?
Yeah.
And he is asking already. He's like, "You okay?" And he's explaining stuff like, we'll get to it, but right.
Yeah. No, that's good. And we will, like you said, we're going to get to it. So we're in Kansas City. We see a man, a part of militia, armed with an assault rifle, standing guard with 5 other soldiers by a Fedra barricade, but they are not Fedra.
Nope.
And next, there is a man, chained, sitting in a shipping container, answering to a woman who is standing before him. And he is telling her repeatedly that he knows nothing, but she keeps on asking. And he pleads with her before listing off a bunch of names, ending with Henry Burrell. And she figures out that he must know where Henry is based off of his physical reaction prior to him saying, "No, I don't know anything," with a head shake. And she reads the sign on the inside of the shipping container wall that lists off the rules and rights governed by Fedra. It's a taunt. She's taunting him. But Kathleen, we learn her name is Kathleen, so I'm just going to use her name, Kathleen, wonders if this was the cell where her brother was beaten to death. And the man that's chained up says she's wrong and things have gone too far. But Kathleen counters this with how his tune has suddenly changed now that he's the one in the hot seat. Yep. Before, it was just perfectly fine to rat people out to Fedra. But he talks of Fedra's tactics, and she mirrors them here by putting a gun near to his head to get the truth from him. And we learn here that he is her doctor, that he delivered her when she was born. And it earns a small, minuscule moment of sympathy from Kathleen, but probably not enough given what we know happens. But this man never told Fedra about Kathleen's brother. That's what he's saying. But Henry, or that's what she's saying, but Henry did tell Fedra, and he's still in the city. And that's why this older man, this doctor, is being held at gunpoint. Excuse me, not just by chains. But now she presses the gun to his head as she asks again, and he says that she won't do it because he's her doctor. And a horn blares from the outside, and it steals her attention. And Kathleen goes to see what all the hubbub is about. And we see 2 dead men on the ground, or one dead, one dying man on the ground that Joel handled in and outside around the laundromat. And Kathleen asks, "Jeffrey!"
Oh,
She's from Wayfair, and that's a joke, but she asks a heavily geared man who did this, and that man is none other than Jeffrey friggin' Pierce, who is the original Tommy Miller in The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 games.
Represent.
In his new role on this show, which he has not been officially named on the show, but if you go to IMDb, his name is Perry. So if you hear us call him as Perry, that's why.
Yeah,
but
the man with the remarkably whole beard
and hair,
just the full mane, just yes. A godlike figure.
He truly is. And Jeff, if you're listening to this episode, and I know that's a very small possibility, but if you are, you look fearsome and wonderful and great. And I've been following along with his journey and his fitness journey for years now. He got himself, he's a brick shit house right now because
sure is.
Damn. And it shows. So I love it. We love it, Jeff. But Perry here tells Kathy that he thinks it was outsiders responsible for killing these men, or almost killing the one. But it's not Fedra, despite them and their truck being heavily supplied. And Kathleen supposes that Henry might have called these outsiders in if he somehow had access to a radio, and asks whether one of the men on the ground will live. And she looks back quickly towards the container from whence she came and asks about whether a doctor would make a difference. And she is told that it will not, that this man is going to die. And her demeanor changes. I mean, her whole physicality shifts as she doubles back to the cell, stands outside of it once it's opened, fires off one round, and kills the doctor. And once outside again, Kathleen orders and thus incites her people to find whomever killed her men and to find Henry specifically, but in the end, kill them all.
Yeah.
There shall take no prisoners. And we see heavily fortified trucks with plows, one with the run plow, which is just terrifying, and it's retrofitted armor and fully outfitted soldiers just everywhere on all of the things. And they leave in mass at her orders. They begin going door to door in search for these quote unquote outsiders. Then we see a high-low bar with the windows papered over, and then we cut to an inside shot, and Joel is peeking through a small gap in between the newspapers.
That's right.
And Ellie asks why or who they are, rather, and Joel just says they're people. They're just people. But that for now, they will be safe for a while that group is starting with apartment buildings first in their searches. Mm-hmm. They'll leave as soon as they don't hear a truck, essentially. So Joel and Ellie settle in here, and Ellie asks if Joel is okay as he sits at the table just with his head kind of hanging down. And Joel asks the same, and basically they both are, quote unquote, all right. But he acknowledges here that he made a mistake, that he didn't hear the guy coming from behind, and Ellie shouldn't have had to have done what she did because she's just a kid and she shouldn't know what it means to kill someone or even hurt someone, a non-infected specifically, even though she didn't kill that man. But Joel says he knows what it's like that first time you hurt someone and tries to empathize with her here and sympathize. And he stumbles through his words a little bit because he's not good at doing the whole emotion thing. And Joel, we know.
I'm not good at the feelings and the emotionality.
He's not. But he says he's sorry for that, and Ellie, that he's sorry that Ellie had to do that, essentially, because of his mistake. She had to do that, and he apologizes to her. And Ellie cries here. She lets that vulnerability basically rise up to the surface real quick, but she harshly brushes away her tears just real quick, like left, right, her arms and her sleeves just wiping at her face. But then she tells him here that wasn't her first time hurting someone. She doesn't specifically say killing someone, but that wasn't her first time. And Joel gets down on the floor, takes a knee, and pulls the pistol out of his back pocket, and he unloads it and begins to teach Ellie how to properly hold a pistol after she shows him what she learned at the Fedra military boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, finger off trigger, thumb over thumb, left hand squeezes down over the right, and he gives it a good pull, but she holds on, and she learns that lesson real quick. And then Joel takes it back, reloads it, and hands it to her, but says it stays in her pack so she doesn't shoot her damn ass off. Which is perfect. Great lesson.
Yep.
And this girl is, at this point, just fighting smiles all the way through this entire bit because Ellie with her pistol is much like Joel and the battery might have been had they ever been reunited before Tess left. But after, Joel pulls the boards off the door and tries to reassure her and himself that they will get through this. And Ellie just, shores up his affirmations with, I know that we will. And they exit the high-low bar, but hold on. So,
whoa.
The actor, the older man that was kept in chains, who we learn was Kathleen's doctor, was John Getz. And I recognized him, but I couldn't remember where, so I did a little research. So he was in things like Zodiac, CSI, Law & Order, SVU, and so much more. He is a great TV actor, and I was so happy to see him appear in this, because I cannot tell you the last time I've seen him in anything.
I mean...
But I really like him.
If you're not one of the core cast of CSI, Law & Order, or SVU, that means you're just on there for an episode, and you're either...
the bad guy or the dead guy,
or a bad guy, and that's your entire run.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of cool though. Zodiac's that's pretty that's high profile. That's it's pretty good. I mean, even a character actor in a David Fincher film it's quite noteworthy.
Mm-hmm. So I just little shout out, John Getz. We see you. You came and you went. But Henry Burrell,
John gets shot.
Oh,
Boom.
Oh
All
my
right, we can
God.
wrap it up, guys. This
No.
was
No,
oh wait.
no.
Oh, okay.
No.
Boom goes the dynamite.
So Henry Burrell. So this is the first mention of Henry from Henry and Sam from the game. But beyond that, this whole scenario it just screams the original plot from The Last of Us Part 1. And we will talk more about this in the game spoiler section because I don't want to say much more about that.
Fair. My lips are sealed.
Yes, we will get into that. So Bella Ramsey and the little hints of her British accent. I hear you. I hear you, Bella. And I heard it very much when Ellie was behind the newspapered windows asking like, who is that? What is that? There was a very distinct British accent to that, and I laughed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean most evident in the part where she's like, "Oi, guff."
Really? Anyway, next point. So Joel is much, much, much more emotionally available in this show than he ever was in the game. Really. And I want to talk about this with you a little bit. I think it's necessary for the show.
Sure. We talked about this.
Yeah, it was not necessary for the games. And I think that personally, and again, I'm not going to spoil anything in the games or in the show, but I think the level of emotion, the emotional fallout and payoff of events that happened in the game are probably as severe as they can get because of his disposition, where in the show it might be a little less impactful because he's a bit more forthcoming with things.
And
I know that can swing either way.
Yeah.
Because people who are more emotionally open and vulnerable, if something happens, then it's like, oh, I'm even more hurt because of XYZ. But I think for me, it might swing the other way.
It's you comparing the game to the show again.
I know. It's hard for me not to.
In the game, again, we keep it spoiler free. Just the whole premise of the game is that, yes, Joel is Joel, but you are Joel.
Yes.
And you, the player, controlling Joel, are Joel, or at least the surrogate of Joel. So there are moments and things that happen that make you, the player, feel sad or empathetic or wonder, right? And I think those things are cumulative over a 20 to 30 hour experience in the game versus what do we have here? 9-10 hours of show, right? And so we have to, there is no,
well, the first game was, you can get the first game done in between 10 to 12 hours.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. So even on the same exact timeline, I just feel like a lot more of the onus is put on you, the player, to feel deeply, right? And then the character of Joel eventually comes around or like opens up in ways that he may not have, and that just wouldn't work on television, to have a completely stoic, like non-feeling, nonplussed character just going through this world. So I like what they are. All that is to say, I just like what they're doing. I like that these two are, at least, I wouldn't describe them as close, but I would say that they are curious about each other, about their lives, about this, that, and the other, and how they play off of each other. So, yeah.
I agree with that. And also, they have to be. Otherwise, it would be weird to just be dead silent constantly.
Right. Exactly. We need to fill this air somehow. So I am of the mindset that I think like an approach like, not that they're anything the same, but if we were to go with something like Ted Lasso, right? In Ted Lasso, the analog would be like Joel is Roy, right? And he's gruff and just like to the point, and he takes no shit, right?
Yeah.
And we grow to love the character of Roy in very short order through that first season. And I think that's kind of the same analog that we have here. I think Joel is a person who, despite some missteps and some stumbles and these things, him being more emotional from the jump will ultimately result in something better. I think. I hope.
I do hope. Last thought before moving to the next section. So Ellie saying she has killed before. And again, we are gathering that it was a full kill from her past, not just a half almost kill. But we can only kind of talk a little bit about this here like we did in the notes before having to move the rest of it to the spoiler section of this show.
Sure.
But it was interesting that, again, like we're talking about this forthcoming nature of these characters, and in the game they were much more reserved at that. Ellie brought the kind of comedic balance in certain areas, but she was never like, oh, this, and this happened, and I was here, and I did that. It was never that way between either one of them. So if Joel is being forthcoming, it would only make sense that Ellie is as well. And again, I think that they're, like you said, they're playing off of one another. They're curious. And even what she tells him here keeps him awake at the end of this episode, and he has to ask her about it. Now, she doesn't answer it, and she ends up deflecting, but, we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah. They're doing, I keep coming back to the exact same word, but it's smart. They are giving you enough information to keep you interested and engaged without giving you everything, because it will hit harder later after more experience with these two. Yeah. And so that's, you couldn't ask for anything better. It's the carrot on the end of the stick type situation. Like, let's, at the end of an episode, you're like, I want the next episode. But yeah, that's what HBO is great at, this prestige appointment television. It's it's on full display here.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Kathleen. Oh my God. I'm sure we'll dedicate like a whole section to this, to Melanie Lynskey, but the best. Kathleen is in the laundromat by the truck, the one that they crashed into, right? No sign of the outsiders, but Perry, her right-hand man, has found something. They walk to a white door and they enter. They proceed upwards into a like nondescript building. We're not really sure where we are. He pulls down an attic ladder, right? And then she grabs a flashlight and heads up. There are drawings all over the wall of what appear to be it's like Superman, all right? Or Supermen, I guess, right? Yeah. There are two Supermens flying together. We have empty cans of food, and just like the place looks to have been lived in maybe recently. Yeah. Right. Kathleen comes down and says they're out of food, and Henry won't let Sam starve. Okay. Double the guards, because she feels like they are close, right? One of those sixth sense things. Sure. But there is something else Perry brings up. A soldier nearby sighs.
No, Perry is the soldier that sighs.
Oh, okay. All right. There were like multiple people in this, on the way up here. I thought it was one of the other guys. It's Perry. They're in like some sort of industrial basement, right? It could have been like the basement of the laundromat. We don't really know. Yeah. But they're looking at some flooring. They're like, they unlock this door. It's like, this door swings open, and they look at this floor, and there's like a huge dent in it. It looks like a huge wrecking ball just kind of like dropped on this piece of floor. That I don't believe that's what happened, but
it's sinking in. I wouldn't say a dent.
A sink, but I mean, like we're seeing like the concrete that was the floor is also, it's just very stylized. It looks really, really cool, is what I'll say. The flooring moves. it looks like it's breathing, right?
Yeah.
It looks like it takes a breath and there is a sound. And Kathleen and Perry, it does it once very subtly, and then it does like a heave almost. And like Kathleen and Perry close the door, lock it, and they're like, ho, ho, ho. Don't tell anybody about this. That's like their agreement. Like, don't tell it. Like, let's just figure out the Sam and Henry situation, then we'll deal with this thing. Okay. Seal off the building. No one in or out.
Yeah.
And he follows her orders, and that's that.
Yeah. And I mean, but Perry was the one that wanted to let everyone know. Kathleen is very adamant on basically taking care of the Henry Sam situation because her revenge quest is more important. And she's putting the lives of everyone in her charge essentially at risk, which of course we are going to see the problem with that in episode 5, which airs this Friday in 3 days. So
close.
Yeah, that's going to be another really good like payoff that we've been talking about. But before we move on, so we get to see a little bit about Sam and Henry and how they've been surviving. And this is, how do I talk about this without doing too much game talk? But we know enough history of Henry and Sam to already know that they've deviated from that to an extent.
Right.
And have brought Henry and Sam into this faction somehow, or into Kathleen's life in a different way that we don't know about. So I absolutely love Henry and Sam in the video game. And I'm very interested as to how this story will play out in this upcoming episode. Because we really don't know.
And for reference, I mean, it is no. We don't know. It starts with a line of questioning from Kathleen to this doctor about her brother,
who was beat to death.
But we don't know. We don't know a lot about the circumstances of this. Only that she believes that Henry was involved, right?
Yeah.
And that's super interesting because that's not, we have no knowledge of what that could be.
Yeah.
At all. And that's what I'm like, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, oh, these are the smart little choices where they've like taken what might have been like in the game, like it might have been like a little note that you found or a little piece of lore around the world. And have expanded and spun it out into a very interesting side narrative, like a B story almost.
Yeah.
So that is, I'm super jazzed about it.
Same.
I can't even speak to what I think it is because I don't know. Right? It could be anything. We don't know these people, so that's a very exciting thing as a game player to be like. We got both ends of it in this episode. We got a lot of stuff that we were familiar with, and then we were presented with a lot of mystery. Yeah, I love the balance there. It's like
perfect, well
struck is what I'll say.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we knew about Bill and Frank from the games.
Yeah,
but what the show gave us about Bill and Frank was a complete deviation, and it just soared to. I mean, just like absolute stunning lengths in the story that was given to us. And now we're meeting Henry and Sam in a very different way. And I'm excited for it. And, you know, to kind of just put a capstone on the comments for this section, the storage room sequence is absolutely terrifying. And I cannot wait to see this unfold on Friday. Same thing with Henry and Sam.
You're talking about the floor breathing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just
and we know what that is. If you've watched the trailer for the show, you can fucking put it together. We're not going to say it here because no spoilies, but we know what that is.
But there are some people that don't watch the trailers, which is great.
Exactly.
Go get down with your bad self.
Yes.
Being able to remove yourself from the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah. Make sure you have a blanket. Something. Just in case you need to hide your face. Whatever.
Yeah.
something. But that's all we're going to say. So on to the next section. So Joel boosts Ellie for the first time, and he gets her up and into a shipping and receiving building. She busts through the little door or the little window at the top, and then unlocks the door and lets him in with a, "Where'd you be without me, huh?" And he just kind of deadpans her with a, "Wyoming." And he is not wrong. He is not wrong, Ellie. But tonight they'll make their way up 45 flights of stairs, and in the morning they'll find a way out of the city, essentially.
Yeah.
But it quickly turns into Joel saying that they will go as far as he can make it up these steps. And let me tell you, when I said I fucking felt that in my soul watching that, because it's not easy. That's all. The older you get, it all your bones hurt. But they huff and puff as they go up and up and up. And we are listening to some familiar Last of Us music. Like when that's incorporated. But Ellie takes this opportunity to ask Joel about how the guy who pretended to be hurt wasn't actually hurt, and how Joel knew about it, how he knew that it was an ambush. And Joel tells her that he's been on both sides through heaving breaths, mind you, and that he did what he needed to do to survive, that Tommy was there. And Ellie asks if Joel killed innocent people. Tommy and Tess were there, rather.
Yeah.
And Ellie asks if Joel killed innocent people, and Joel doesn't answer this, but just continues on upwards. And eventually they'll break into a room on the 33rd floor because Joel is tapped.
Right.
And
oh, God.
Ellie, kind of laughs a little bit, and then she stretches her hand out to him, and he takes it. And she calls him a lazy ass, but he stands up with, "I'm 56 years old, you little shit." Basically.
That's right.
Shut up. These bones are 56 years old. So is this heart. But from here, they break into an office area, and they lay couch cushions on the floor as they prepare to sleep for the evening. And Joel breaks glass, and takes some of the broken glass that he used, like that he broke to get in there, and sprinkles it on the floor so no one can get the drop on them.
Yeah.
Smart plan, pretty simple and effective. And they say goodnight, and Joel lays on his right side. Ellie is also on her right side, so her front is to his back. With, I can't remember what was in the middle of them. Nothing? Something was in the middle. Oh, I thought
think it was like just space.
I thought there was something sat in like a backpack or something, but she would have used that for a pillow. But anyway, so Joel breaks the silence here first because he closes his eyes, but they quickly open because he loops back to that conversation about what Ellie meant by the first time, by saying she hurt someone already before today. But she doesn't want to talk about it, and she rolls onto her back, and he kind of rolls as well because he's kind of opening up to her. Like, he continues this dialogue from earlier, which is a very un-Joel-like thing from the game. And just says that it isn't fair for someone at her age to have to deal with all of this. But she poses a very logical question, a logical question, and just says, "Oh, so it gets better with age?" But no, it does not.
No.
So what's the fucking point of apologizing, essentially? But it's just, he's the adult in this situation, and that is the responsibility. That is his onus, as you have talked about us as the gamers having an onus. But Ellie notes that Joel doesn't hear so well from his right side, and that if Ellie wants to keep her hearing, she should stick to her knife rather than using her pistol or a gun, because that's likely how he is now hard of hearing on the right side. He rolls away and onto the right again, ensuring that he will hear an intruder should one come in the night. And Ellie takes this moment to drop one hell of a legendary pun. And she says, "Did you know diarrhea is hereditary?" And of course, this draws Joel out by turning over, and he's like, "What?" She said, "Yeah, it runs in your genes." And she fights a laugh at this, and Joel rolls back with a Jesus under his breath, but he's laughing slightly too. And of course, she catches this and calls him out on it, but he denies it until he can't anymore, and then just ends up laughing. And the scene closes with them laughing, but Joel urges her to get some sleep. However, the episode's not over just yet. So Joel is now deep in sleep, but he's on his left side, which means his right ear is turned to the room, and Yelly.
Yelly!
Yelly! And Ellie yells at him to wake up. Well, she speaks first and then ends up yelling to wake him up, and there is a gun pointed at her. And when he jerks awake and looks up, there is one pointed at him as well, and it is a young boy with a red smearing of paint across his eyes who just simply puts his finger to his lips and says, shush. And the episode closes with True Faith. The song is being sung by Lottie Kestner, but why wasn't it Ashley Johnson's version is interesting. And we'll talk about that shortly. But actually, let's just talk about it right now. Just quick commentary. Why do you think they used a different version than the original voice/performance actor for Ellie in the Last of Us games?
Licensing's a bitch, you know.
It's
Mia's
HBO.
I know, but think about how many needle drops we've had so far in this show. They've spent, I mean, if like they're like the budget of each episode is $30 million. It was like, oh my God, how many million was used just to get like Hank Williams, you know, or like any of those really great 80s songs we had. I'm not, I mean,
you think Hank Williams would be millions?
I think that song by Hank Williams.
I don't think so.
I mean, relatively, we're talking about a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So they have to pick their battles in a song, in a show that will undoubtedly have going forward, just based on historically what we have in 4 episodes, a lot of music, a lot of musicality to each episode. You know, they got to pick and choose their battles. And so I don't know. Seems like it would be cheaper to use the Ashley version, but again, I don't know. Maybe they require more money if you're going to play like a cover. I don't know. I really don't know how any of that licensing stuff works. So,
all right. Well, if anyone knows, let us know.
Yeah.
But Joel and the reality of age and walking up so many fucking flights of stairs, it ain't easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy. That is my greatest nemesis right now.
We just wanted to comment on just walking up steps does indeed get harder as you get older.
It does. Can confirm.
So, yeah.
Can confirm. When I go to the gym and I use the stair, like the step master thing, that is the hardest piece of equipment because I'm just like, my heart is going to explode out of my chest. I need to slow down. Like I would have to, I'm on floor 20. I need to stop and take a breath. But in reality, I probably would have stopped at floor fucking 5. But anyway, yes. So the ease, and we've been talking about this whole show, but the ease with which these two are settling in is heartwarming when we're watching it in the moment. But it's so different a pace to the game that it's hard for me to fully let it in just yet. But I do love it. Despite my brain going, this is so quick. However, again, as we've discussed, it has to be. We have to see these in-between moments, not just them on the road, not just them fighting, not just them going from place to place or this to that. We have to see the quiet moments of making camp, making food, settling, like unfurling a sleeping bag. Like those are the quiet moments where you need conversation and companionship. Yeah. So yes, it all makes sense, and my brain will get there. I'm just saying.
One thing I want to bring up here too, and it's a quick call out and a call back. Hopefully, I don't know if this is going to pay off or not. However, the end here, right? This is a teaching moment for Joel to Ellie without being like an actual teacher. Like this glass thing.
Yeah.
Is just a thing that she'll probably pick up on as a way, as like a mechanism. I'm sure that has been around for a while. My frame of reference for seeing that for the first time was actually Mission Impossible 1 when Tom Cruise makes his way back from, spoiler alert, an unsuccessful mission. He takes off. Yeah, he takes off his jacket, unscrews the light bulb, breaks it, and then crushes it up. And I think that was Brian De Palma, that the director of that one, just did it in a really expert way where you hear the crunching sound and he, gets into, secret agent mode or whatever. So I just like that here too. Joel just used it's basically an entire pane of glass on the ground. So yeah. Ethan just had a light bulb, but it's just a very cool, just a very cool callback to another Another great one. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And we will not talk about who was at the end of the episode. We will just we're going to let it linger, and we will talk about it in episode 5. But so Tess's name is brought up here quickly with relative ease. And I think that that's also an interesting thing because, again, the game, Joel was very like, we don't talk about Tess,
don't take your name out her mouth.
Yes. And
take
now
my wife's name out your mouth.
Yes. Like, and now it's just, it's different, and it hasn't been that many days. So again, there's just this different.
Hasn't it been though?
No.
Okay. Theoretically, let's think about this just for a moment. We were in Billstown.
10 miles west of Boston, a 20-mile hike to Billstown, and they showered, got supplies, and then left that night in the truck. And then now we're in Kansas City. So that's maybe a day and a half driving.
I know, but
so that's like 3 days since Tess died at most.
I don't know. I just like to think it's like more days.
Yes, that's what we want to think, but it's not really.
We don't know. I mean, there's a weird time compression that does happen on television shows where you're just like, they were at Billstown and now they're in Kansas City. And you're like, well, those two places are fucking far away. Like, and it's not a straight line. It's not like, you could drive from Billstown to Kansas City in a day if you wanted, and you had gas that worked. Right?
All right, so 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, let's just say a week. Let's just say it's a week. I'd love it if it was 1 week since Tess died.
1 week, okay.
Which still makes me real sad that she's not with us anymore. But
rest in rip, Tess. Yeah.
Rip in peace, yeah.
But that's all. He went from you don't talk about Tess to I was Tess. I was with Tess. And Tess this. And we were traveling, and like twice Tess is brought up in the episode. So that's all. Yeah, it was just he processes really fast, I guess. But then not at all when it comes to
that might just
Sarah.
be like the good times. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like reminiscing rather than the morning. Right? We're not talking about Tess when she died. We're talking about Tess prime, as it were. Like,
yes, but grief is not limited to just, like the bomb of grief doesn't happen just because you're talking about good times.
That's true. Oh, no, I can acknowledge that. I just feel like maybe for him in this moment, it was more facts. Like, here are the facts of the situation. It was me. It was Tommy. It was Tess and this crew. And probably that crew is also dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, Tommy's gone. Tess is gone. Yeah. Whatever.
Now I'm nowhere near the Boston QZ. Yeah.
Right. So that's all. That's all. Yeah. A 1 week. Let's call it 1 week of mourning.
And now we can let the good times roll.
Right. 1 week of mourning your partner of 16 years.
I'm good.
Shake it off, Joel. Shake it off.
Oh my God. It's also a little weird. We've been together for 16 years. Side note. But so we're Bill and Frank. Oh my God.
Brank?
Yeah.
Frill?
So yes, that is the dissection of the show. That is not the dissection. That is the review of the show. And now we are going to our TV versus game spoiler section. So people who are not familiar with the game or don't want to be spoiled about things that happened in this episode that happened in the game, just skip ahead a few minutes and meet us at the end. Right now.
Yeah.
So the pun book. Oh my gosh. The pun book is so iconic to the game because one, it was introduced first in The Last of Us Part 1, and then the DLC, which technically takes place before The Last of Us Part 1, but was released after the fact.
Yes.
But it's this intrinsic character trait of Ellie that 100% was used as the comedic relief after high tension sequences. And it's interesting that they put it here because Ellie was just like, she was in the gas station, bathroom, quote unquote, while playing with a pistol, and then she comes outside and she's like, "Oh, siphoning. This is boring." So, joke book. So I
Yeah.
like how it was introduced just a little bit different here. That's all. There was no high tension moment for it to cut through that after the fact, and it still worked and it was still effective. And I think that maybe a part of Craig and Neil's ideas for putting it there was to show that it can be useful anywhere, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think, again, it's just a smart thing to do here, where later it can help cut tension in a meaningful way, in a more meaningful way than if it was done the first time after, like Tess died or whatever. It's like,
it just would be like, no.
Yeah, it falls flat. But here, where there's like very low stakes overall, it's like, oh, well, it's fun. A little frivolity. It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice. The car scene, the magazine moment being identical, while it was very good on the show, and I absolutely enjoyed it, the deliveries were better in the game.
Here we go.
The deliveries were better in the game. And I'm definitely finding myself, the more they try to... I just realized the fan is on this whole fucking episode. Damn it.
Enjoy.
Yes, it's warm in the bedroom, so the fan is on. And clearly I'm in a bedroom. So
I never knew.
Yeah. This bed, it's fake bed. It's not real. But yeah, so there are just, the more they try to replicate scenes from the game, those tend to be my least favorite moments in the show. Because I just prefer the delivery or the energy of Joel and Ellie in the games to the show. And when you're presenting the exact same scenario or situation or dialogue, I have my gold standard. You know what I'm saying?
I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And I don't want to diminish that from the show. It's just that I think is the one downfall of coming into this having been super fan of the game. I am a super fan of the game, not past tense.
It's a problem almost exclusive to you.
It is not.
How dare
you? Thank you. Yeah. Was it the face?
It was.
It was the face.
It was good.
I'm not sorry. Yeah. So, and so Kathleen wanting vengeance. And I probably could have talked about this earlier because it didn't happen in part 1. But Kathleen wanting vengeance for her brother being killed was part of the original plot that Neil Druckmann had in mind for part 1. So Tess was supposed to torture and kill Joel. And there's even concept art to back this up. I'm not just like talking out of my ass here. And it was basically, he wanted this revenge plot in game 1. But his partner at the time, Bruce Straley, who has since left Naughty Dog, basically countered with, let's try something else. Let's do something else. Revenge has kind of been done before. And they went a different way. But I just found it interesting that that nugget was brought into season 1 because it's an interesting arc to have now, knowing what we know happens in part 2.
So here you say Kathleen wanting vengeance, and then it says Tess was supposed to torture and kill Joel. So you're saying that
it doesn't matter the character. It was always somebody wanting vengeance because their loved one, their brother, was killed and somebody had to pay.
Yeah, I'm just saying that they went a different direction with Tess in the games.
Yes, thankfully.
To turn her, and then they dropped this revenge plot or sidelined it, whatever. And then they have reintroduced it with this new character,
whole new character
of Kathleen.
Well, that's not technically new because if you remember the notes,
she
lost her son in the game.
It is, that is interesting. But I wonder if, I don't know if it seemed like there was somebody, if we're going through the notes that we find in the game for this section.
She wasn't a leader.
She wasn't the leader. She was the person they were looking for. She was like what they called like the crazy woman, right? Who was like taking out members of this like
faction.
These rebels. Yeah, this faction. And so it is an interesting pivot where they're like, let's take this thing that we sidelined. Let's give it new life. Marry it to this thing that we had as a series of notes, but then also promote her to be the person who runs this thing. It's great. Like,
it is great, but I think it'll prove to be like extremely short-sighted in episode 5. And it shows the downfalls of revenge and the consumption of it. So if they're doing that already this early, that might very well change a lot of what's to happen in part 2. Because why tell the same story twice or thrice by that point?
Yeah, that's really what this depends on a lot of is like the resolution of Henry and Sam, right?
Yeah.
What they have in store for these characters, what was the impetus for Kathleen's pursuit of Henry and Sam? Like, what was the catalyst that caused her brother to die because as a direct result of something that Henry did? Like, what did Henry do?
Yeah.
Or not do, right? We don't know, because that's not Henry and Sam don't have this. They arrive in a completely different fashion, right?
Yeah.
So
in the game they're just hiding out from the hunters who have no idea who they are.
It's an uneasy alliance to escape together. There is never any of this. We're only allies because we have a common goal of not dying, right?
Yeah, a common enemy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that I love a good revenge, I love a good revenge. So we'll just see how it goes. I think I read that this episode and the next episode are directed by the same person. So I love that we'll have a consistency between these two. And I think the same person is directing the last 2 episodes too.
Interesting.
So that might be like a two-hander as well, like set up, payoff. Yeah. So I like this. This is interesting. I didn't know about the test thing. And I like Kathleen as a character. She's like one of my favorite actresses. So like, of course, like, even if she's only, even if she's only on the show for 2 episodes,
we're going to love her for 2 episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. She'll be a memorable ass character for 2 episodes as far as I'm concerned. So
hell yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
And so Ellie having killed before alludes, of course, to the story with Riley and the Left Behind DLC and how she was bitten. And clearly Ellie was the one who was immune and Riley is not around. So we can assume that the first time she killed was this person that was very, very close to her heart. And that's also part of that darkness, that like quiet rage that's brewing within her.
Sure.
But also the reticence for her to not speak about it out loud. Like, hitherto shall come, but no further kind of thing. Like, I'll tell you just enough to know that I'm not, necessarily wet behind the ears with this, but that's it.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
Joel and Ellie lying on the ground / floor. These are absolute visual parallels to what will happen in The Last of Us, or what did happen in The Last of Us Part 2. And his...
Don't say it.
Yeah. It's all over the internet. If any of you are on the internet, you've been spoiled. But there is a visual parallel that is being shown to us, a direct parallel to events that happen later on in the story of The Last of Us. And it is not easy to see, and I doubly dislike it because a lot of new fans who are just kind of experiencing this secondhand make fun of a lot of this shit. And I'm like, the old person that I am doesn't like that. So shut your fucking mouth, essentially. And I know
the olds aren't having it.
Yeah. I know that's gatekeepy, but like this is something that's been around for 10 years and it's been a major part of my life for 5 now, 4 or 5.
Sure.
And even before that, I loved it before becoming fully obsessed with it. But yeah, it's hard to see people they're just like, oh, I'm the first person that ever thought of this. Let's make a joke about it. And it's like, sit down. Sit down.
It's fine.
And hush.
Knowing those things, knowing that I don't know. I keep going back to that thing that Neil said at the end about like when to deviate. And I can't help but wonder. I know that you love the game a lot.
Sure.
However, I just think that like Craig's hand in this of like just steering it in certain directions. Mm-hmm. And I've tweeted this and I was like, there is the possibility for this story to be far more impactful, even if you list very closely to the narrative beats, right? Mm-hmm. But if they just happen in a slightly different configuration with different motivations, I think it could, and I just think it could be better. And that I chalk that up to Craig. Essentially, what if like I was my thought, what I get back to is like, what if Craig was like the co-director of the games? How would they be meaningfully different? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, would we have gotten some of these things that we saw in the games as well?
Potentially. I mean, again, I've read enough to know some of the some of the points of failure between people who were in charge. And I don't really like saying their names because I don't want to blackball us anymore or blacklist us any more than we have been.
There's no need to call anybody out, you know. But it's just
I mean there are very large egos at play when it comes to these particular games. And if you speak a word to the otherwise, it upsets an enormous group of people who just blindly follow without realizing that constructive criticism is healthy. And I think that that's primarily Craig Mazin's role in this, where it's like, okay, I know you love this thing and this particular element. It can still be told the same with the same impact, but bringing a little bit more of this, that, or the other to it to make more sense or to transition it easier from one scene to the next. Because we're working outside of the spectrum of a game and so on and so forth. So I do think that there's something to be said about fresh eyes and a fresh voice being lent to this property for sure. Because of those egos in charge that just don't want to fucking hear a thing because everyone is wrong but themselves. That's all.
That is, it's the perfect example of, I don't know. I was just talking about this just offhandedly the other night, and it was like, Craig feels like the ideal, like you don't get a better person than Craig to do this for your game because he played and loved the game, right? Mm-hmm. So when I hear that Amazon has God of War and I hear that Netflix has Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm like, that's all well and good. 2 other game properties, if you're not familiar, 2 other major Sony game properties. Like those are the 3, right?
Amazing game properties.
Like widely considered to be like some of the best narratives you could experience in video games, like Naughty Dog games, the Horizon series, the God of War series, starting in 2018. So Amazon is a company that clearly can spend a lot of money. Like, look at that Lord of the Rings show, which I've never watched, but I mean, look at it. It's incredible. Like, it just looks beautiful. And then Netflix, you know, not known for like going overboard, like whatever the Stranger Things cost or the Crown, I guess, right? That's what they cost. But I'm like, that's all well and good, but who is going to be the creative force behind God of War? Are you going to get Corey to co-make it with you? Corey Barlog? I mean, that's ideal, but is that what Amazon wants to do? Not every studio is that open to collaboration, right?
Yeah.
If you have a showrunner who's like, fuck this. This is my vision of what God of War is, or this is my vision. You know, that is that same thing you just mentioned about huge egos. I mean, that's present in video games, but I feel like there's nowhere more present than in Hollywood, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
nobody wants to share
not saying
credit.
like, oh, the egos at Naughty Dog or Sony or whatever are just, worse. No, this is not just it's not limited to just that studio.
That's all I'm saying is that, like, I mean, I don't know how this worked out in such a, like, it's in such good hands because of a fan who just so happens to also be just like an incredible storyteller / director is behind the wheel here. Yeah. I don't have that same faith for some of these other properties that I really, really love. For them to make that transition in the way that we have seen so far in just 4 episodes. So that's all. I hope Craig, I love his guiding hand on this, right? It's clear that he knows the stuff and wants it to be the best that it can be. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm like, there is a real possibility here that this might surpass for me. I'm not ready to call it yet, but there is I have that in the back of my head. I was like, the feels that I have felt so far are tremendous. So
yeah, I saw that tweet. And for the record, that's what I'm saying. Andrew hadn't told me that until he tweeted it. And then my cousin sent it to me and I was like, excuse me, what?
Sometimes I tweet stuff out into the world. It's really just like a notebook. It's like a notebook. And then I just put it, but it's like a notebook that everybody can read. And that's all.
I get it. I do get it.
We won't know until we close the book on The Last of Us. Mm-hmm. Will I be able to make the definitive call either way? But I'm just saying, it's already real good.
Yeah. All right. So that's that. The show rating. We don't really have a section for this, but I just kind of off the top of my head, I gave episode 1 10 out of 10. Episode 2 was 7 out of 10. What? Episode 3 was 10 out of 10. For episode 4, I'm going to go 8.5 out of 10.
We're adding ratings now? I didn't even know we were doing this. You were just doing this in your head?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I've said them every show.
Every episode is
every
10.
Show.
I'm a big fan. No. I give it 8.5 feels good for this one. 8.5. There's a fair amount of tension. It's a lot of character stuff, but it's great. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff I like too. I like the balance. So it's good.
Yep. But that's episode 4. Please take to my hand. Or please hold to my hand, excuse me. But some contact information and then our lovely call to arms by Mr. Andrew. If you would like to follow us on Instagram, you can do that at TLOU Podcasts. If you would like to go to Twitter, you can follow us there at TLOU Podcast. Our YouTube, just search for TLOU Podcast and you will find our channel. Give us a sub. Check out our videos. And if you'd like to listen to our other podcast dedicated to The Last of Us games and only The Last of Us games, you can do that by looking up Wayfaring Strangers, and that is the word wayfaring without the G, and on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Google, all the things everywhere you will find us. We also have a website, tloupodcast.com. You can check out all the things going on over there. And I do have some updating to do to that site, so I have to do that soon. But if you'd like to follow me personally, you can do that at Jaded Vader on all of the platforms. If you'd like to follow Andrew personally, you can do that at Dark Driving on all of the platforms. So yeah.
All of them.
Check us out.
All of them. Hey friends, it's your old pal Andrew here. Have you watched this long? Are you still here with us? We're 2 plus hours in. Still, We can't keep the episodes beneath 2 hours. It's impossible.
This wasn't my fault this week.
For my fault, how dare you? 45-minute episode. Here we are. 3.5 times longer than the episode itself. That's okay. We love to see it. All that is to say, I'd like to implore you now to do what the only Musser has done, what Josh, that has done, and rate and review our show on your platform of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Pocket Casts, Stitcher Premium, wherever you find this show. I guess it's everywhere. I have to just assume it's everywhere. Yeah. Go give us 5 stars. I'm going to read 2 reviews.
Please.
Just two quick reviews that we have right here. It's great. The only Musser, I don't know, Musser, writes, if you're looking for the longest runtime, biggest fan energy, and or have just started watching Tilu, this is the podcast for you.
Thank you.
The only Musser going, with the
right in.
The quantity over quality potentially. If you
imagine? Don't read into it that way.
If you want the longest podcast imaginable, listen to this one.
Yeah. If that's all you want. Well,
if you don't care what they're saying,
you.
But you just need to kill 3 hours.
They're gonna change their review. Knock it off.
We're having fun. Look at us. Look at us. Josh, that writes. I just have to assume it's that Josh.
That Josh.
Let me tell you something about this podcast. Boy, does it excite me when I see an episode is dropped. I would rate it 11 out of 10 and compare it to the feeling of listening to this. Compare the feeling of listening to this podcast to getting an extra 11th nugget in your 10 piece. How often have you gotten that extra 11th nugget in your life? Yeah. Just if you had to say how often?
Gosh.
Is it like one? You can count on one hand? Yeah.
Maybe one time, not even one hand.
I like the one where sometimes you get like an onion ring in your fries.
That's good. But I don't eat fast food like that anymore. So it's been
I know it's been a minute, but but still, you could look fondly back on your youth and say like, hey, extra nugget.
Actually, today, this morning, I made myself poached eggs for breakfast. When I cracked one of my eggs open, it had 2 yolks in there. I was like, that's like fucking getting the extra nugget.
Kind of. It's kind of the same amount of volume, but because it all has to still fit in an egg. But 2 yolks is good. 2 yolks is good. Josh, that, the only Musser. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
If you have a moment, you don't have to do anything other than give us 5 stars. That'll help boost us up so more people can listen. You heard earlier that our listenership has gone up 300%. I think that is in no small part to some of the reviews and ratings we've gotten on the various platforms and stuff. Helps us stand out, helps us just to keep this thing going. I love reading when people compare us to chicken nuggets and tell us that they will listen to us go on for hours on end.
Yeah.
So, yes, please do that if you have an opportunity. And if you want to write something, obviously, I will read it and I will snark on it at the end of these episodes. So
lovingly
thank you. Yeah.
Lovingly.
Look, we have fun.
We do have fun.
Like, as we said in the beginning, it's just the right amount of fun.
Yes. Yes. All right. Do you want to do the outro or you want me to do the outro?
You do the outro. I did it last time.
You did it all 3 times.
Oh, then I'll do it. Okay. Here we
go.
Here we go. Should I drink? No, it's fine. Until we're hauling ass from the sinkhole of horrors again next week, survivors. This is where we pull the wool over our eyes and pretend we do not see.
That's that. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening to our show. Thank you for rating and reviewing and subscribing and all of the things on all of the platforms. We love you. And we'll be back actually sooner rather than later because
we're already breaking our weekly review drop. We're breaking the schedule. What, Monday? Probably?
Maybe, yeah. Well, because go
Comes out
Birds.
On Friday.
Go Birds. The Eagles are in the fucking Super Bowl.
Hey, fuck Eagles. Let's go, Eagles.
Eagles, yeah.
We're going to get some potato salad. Going to bring it down to the family.
If the Birds win, if the Birds lose, maybe our show will drop on Monday. But
Look,
if nothing else, it will be out by Wednesday.
If Jack, sports Jack ends up, it's like, oh God, I have to just take a moment of silent reflection about my life choices and supporting this goddamn local sports team in Philadelphia. We'll
Always.
see. We'll see how it goes.
And that could be if they win or lose, honestly.
Win, lose, or draw.
There is no draw. So yeah, either way, at the latest, the episode will be out next Wednesday. At the earliest, it could be Sunday afternoon, Monday afternoon.
We'll go.
See. But yes, thank you guys. We'll be back next week-ish.
Bye.
Bye.